Hello there, my name is Matthew Miller, and I'm here to rank my favorite debut Doctor Who episodes for each of the first 11 Doctors. I decided not to rank Deep Breath just yet as Peter Capaldi's first episode because usually it takes me a while for that to settle in just so I can figure out where I would put it. But no, don't get me wrong, that was a good episode. But now it's time to look back in some of the previous doctors and how they entered into the scene. So hopefully you come along with me, and no, here we go.
My least favorite debut episode for a new Doctor is The Twin Dilemma. I do believe that Colin Baker never got a fair shake as the Doctor. However, starting off by trying to kill your companion is definitely not a great way to get things going. It seems that fans were never able to forgive Colin's Doctor for trying to strangle Perry. It was also strange in that this was the season finale, so this was the final time people saw Colin Baker as the Doctor until the following season. Colin's last line as the new Doctor in that story was, "I am the Doctor, whether you like it or not." It seemed to rub a lot of people the wrong way. This was also the start of the gradual decline in popularity for the classic series. Seeing that I'm not really a fan of this story, I am just moving on. I really do not like seeing this sort of domestic abuse sort of thing, especially in Doctor Who, and especially by the Doctor. Number 10 on my list would have to be the first Doctor's introductory episodes. An Unearthly Child, starring William Hartnell. Now, to be fair, the first episode of this serial is being sort of required viewing for Whovians. It provided a sense of mystery that followed the Doctor for decades after premiering. It rubbed some people the wrong way, especially those who got their introduction to the Doctor with the new series. The story begins with Ian and Barbara, two school teachers, discussing their odd pupil named Susan Foreman. In order to find out about this child, the two teachers decided to follow Susan home, but saw her entering a junkyard. Upon entering the junkyard, Ian and Barbara found nothing of interest except for a police box strangely sitting in the middle of it. That was when an old man entered the junkyard. He was about to enter the police box when Ian and Barbara comes up from behind and began questioning him about Susan. The old man says he knows nothing about her. Susan calls for her grandfather from the police box while opening the door. The two teachers forced their way into the police box when, surprise, they found it bigger on the inside than on the outside. Afraid that the two will tell others about what they saw, the grandfather, who introduces himself as the Doctor, decides to kidnap Ian and Barbara, taking them on a trip to the Stone Age. From there, it's basically a story about how the group was kidnapped by cavemen, which they then escaped to only get captured and escape again. It's a pretty basic story, but that first episode from the serial still stands out. At number 9, I think that the fifth Doctor's opening episode, Castrovalva starring Peter Davison, would have to fit here. It's not that it's a bad episode, just merely a forgettable one. The Doctor and company find themselves stuck in a time loop in the world of Castrovalva. The rest of the episode has the Doctor trying to find his way out. Like I said, it's not a bad episode, merely forgettable. So let's just move on to number 8, Time and the Rani. I loved Sylvester McCoy's 7th Doctor, but this episode was not one of his best. This episode just seemed like it was thrown together in order to explain McCoy's appearance as the Doctor. In this episode, the Rani, another Time Lord, pulled the TARDIS to crash land, which forced a regeneration for the Doctor. Using the trauma caused by this regeneration, the Rani attempted to trick the Doctor to help her gain control of asteroids comprised completely of strange matter, whatever that is. Now, while it was fun seeing Sylvester McCoy crawl around in Colin Baker's oversized clothes, it still had the feeling that things were a little rushed. And at number 7, for me that goes to the Christmas Invasion. Now believe me, I enjoyed David Tennant's Doctor. The problem with this story, though, is that you hardly ever see him. For most of the episode, he's lying down in bed. For a show that's about the Doctor, I would like to see the Doctor. Well, that's enough of that. With number 6, that would have to go to the 1996 movie starring Paul McGann's 8th Doctor. Personally, I think that this movie was judged a little too harshly. McGann was fun as the Doctor, and his Big Finish audio plays gave a glimpse at just what his Doctor could have been. In this film, the Master, this time played by an incredibly hammy Eric Roberts, is trying to take over the TARDIS in order to take the Doctor's remaining regenerations. The process of taking over the TARDIS would of course destroy the world. Now, Eric Roberts was probably the worst thing about this film, but another thing that threw people off was that it was the Doctor's first on-screen kiss. People did not want to think of the Doctor as a sexual person, I guess. To those people I say, well, he had a granddaughter. She had to come from somewhere, right? What the movie did right, though, was with McGann himself. He presented a compassionate Doctor that was not before seen, which probably paved the way for the future Doctors like David Tennant and Matt Smith. Also, it was nice to see Sylvester McCoy back for a little while, even though his exit was somewhat less than expected for our favorite Time Lord. For the fifth best story, that would go to Tom Baker's debut as the fourth Doctor with Robot. What is the story about? A robot, like the title says. Oh, and the robot becomes a giant robot, somehow. Tom Baker presented a great Doctor from the start, showing some of his more alien aspects. I especially enjoyed the scene where he was trying to find a new costume, which included a Viking outfit, amongst other things. Still, this story did not have the same level of drama that other debut episodes have. It was a story about a robot. At number 4, Patrick Troughton's first go-around as the second Doctor was excellent. Power of the Daleks provided audiences with a new look at this character everyone thought they knew. This aspect of not knowing who he was portrayed well by his companions, Ben and Polly. In fact, the Doctor himself acted as if he did not know who he was. He referred to himself in third person a number of times, as if saying that the first Doctor was an entirely different person. On the downside, this episode is currently lost to the BBC archive, but its audio tracks still survive. Who knows? Maybe watching the actual film of the show may change how I view this influential episode. Remember that without this episode, Doctor Who would not be around for more than 50 years. The one at number 3 was the episode that brought the series into the 21st century, Rose, starring Christopher Eccleston as the 9th Doctor. This episode brought back the Autons, this time trying to take over the world, which was what they tried to do the first couple of times they showed up. This Doctor was a fully developed character, unlike many other debut episodes. Eccleston was a no-nonsense Doctor, which was readily apparent by his clothes and his demeanor. There was a definite pain in his portrayal as the Doctor that you could feel. Additionally, the relationship between him and Rose was fun from the start. Overall, it was a fun way to start off the new series. My second favorite episode is Jon Pertwee's third Doctor's first episode, Spearhead from Space. Interestingly enough, this was the Autons' first appearance in Doctor Who. It began with the Doctor being marooned on Earth after being exiled by the Time Lord Council. Brigadier Alastair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart found out about the TARDIS landing and decided to go after the Doctor, hoping to get a little help with his problems. When he found the good Doctor, the Brigadier did not recognize him. Meanwhile, the Nestene intelligence was sending out scouts preparing for a full-scale invasion. These agents that were used were the Autons, which are basically living creatures made of plastic. Once the Brigadier became convinced that the Doctor was actually the Doctor, the Time Lord took over the role of science advisor for the United Nations Intelligence Task Force, or sometimes called the Unified Intelligence Task Force, but either way it is called UNIT. The best thing about this episode is that the action just kept going, from the start, which became a trademark of the third Doctor. He was known as being the Action Man, sort of like a James Bond with flashier outfits, if you could believe that. And so that leaves my favorite episode that introduced a new Doctor, The 11th Hour. I have to admit that when I first heard that Matt Smith was taking over the role, I had my doubts. He was the youngest actor to take over the role. I wondered whether Smith would have the gravitas to take over this role. I was definitely mistaken. From the word go, Smith took charge of the situation while still keeping that wonkiness that comes whenever a new doctor comes. There was a very swift pace that led to a satisfying conclusion. It is very difficult to write for a new doctor, trying to figure out what he will become. This episode strikes that balance. And so that's my list of favorite debut episodes for a new doctor. I hope you enjoyed it.
And there you have it. That is the list of my personal favorite debut episodes for each of the previous Doctors. So now we have to look ahead to Peter Capaldi's next adventure, Into the Dalek, which should be fun. You know, that is how Patrick Troughton introduced his run as the Doctor, facing off against the Daleks. And that's a very smart move because, you know, the Daleks are a popular monster and it'll get people watching. So let's see how it goes, and I will see you next time. And, go ahead, feel free to leave me a list of your favorite Doctor Who episodes, which was a debut episode for the Doctor. And until next time.